It's Friday, so it's time for our national town hall meeting with the guy I think of as America's senator, Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator Sanders, welcome. Bernie? Hello? Oh, I got to put him on the air. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Senator, hang on just a second. I screwed up. I've got to push a button here, and I totally forgot to. There you go. You are now on the air.
Am I sounding better?
You are. Yeah, I can hear you.
To myself. All right.
I'm very sorry for that. That was my fault.
I just gave a great speech, Tom, and you missed it.
Of course, right? Murphy's Law. It's Friday the 13th, Bernie.
It's been a very busy week in Washington. As chairman of the Veterans Committee in the Senate, we passed significant legislation along with Senator McCain. He was the co-sponsor of the legislation, which I think goes a reasonable way to address the problem of waiting times and accountability in the VA. It has been my view for a long time, and we had a wonderful show, I thought, a couple of weeks ago, Tom, where we heard from veterans all over the country.
Yes.
And by and large, what we heard and what I hear in Vermont, and I hear from veterans and their organizations, is that once people get into the VA, the care is quite good. Problem we're having is, in some parts of the country, outrageously long waiting lines, and that's an issue we have to address. So I think the bill that we passed in the Senate, among other things, appropriates $500 million to bring in as soon as possible new doctors and new nurses. It helps build a number of facilities which have been on the drawing, have been on the blocks being planned for a number of years in 26 facilities in 18 states and Puerto Rico, which I think will help. We also address the need to bring in more doctors into the system, figuring out ways to do that because we have a national crisis in that direction. And so overall, it's a good piece of legislation that I think will help us resolve or at least significantly improve the situation. Also this week, an issue that is of great concern to me, and I think to the American people, is the very high level of student indebtedness that exists in this country. And I was on the floor the other day just reading some of the letters and comments that we got on this issue from, we have now, I think, over 1,000 people have emailed me stories about what student debt means to them, and I would love to hear more of them. So if any of the listeners are struggling with the high cost of student debt or college affordability, we'd love to hear from them. They can send us their stories at sanders.senate.gov. That would be great. But, the stories are just heartbreaking. And let me just read one of them, if I might. This is from a young woman in Portland, Oregon, who writes, I'm scared and am desperately in need of help. I'm nearly $200,000 in debt from student loans, all because I wanted to get an education. Wasn't that what I was supposed to do? She goes on. And that's the story. We have said to young people, look, it's important for you to go to college. If necessary, go to graduate school. I talked to a young woman a few weeks ago. We did an event here in Burlington, Vermont. A young doctor. $300,000 in debt. $300,000. Talk to dentists, over $200,000 in debt. Lawyers, $150,000 in debt. College students, $60,000 in debt. So you have the absurd situation where we absolutely need, in a very competitive global economy, to have the best educated workforce in the world. And yet what we're saying to young people is, hey, we're creating a situation where you can't go to college because it's too expensive, or if you do go to college, you're going to come out deeply in debt with this ball and chain around your neck. And that's pretty crazy stuff. So there was a bill introduced by Senator Warren this last week, which was a fairly modest bill, but it's a very significant, but not revolutionary. And what it said is that people who have student debt should be able to do what people who have mortgages, home mortgages, what people who have automobile loans are able to do, refinance. That if interest rates go down, you can refinance and have lower interest rates. And that would save billions and billions and billions of dollars. Unfortunately, we only had, I believe, two or three Republican supporters. Republicans filibustered it, and we could not get the 60 votes that we needed. But in truth, even if we got the 60 votes we needed, I think it would be very tough sledding over in the House, because that is not exactly, high student indebtedness is not one of their great concerns over in the Republican House. But we have got to rally the American people on this issue. This impacts young people today who are thinking about going to college. It impacts people who are in college. It impacts people who are graduates of college or graduate school. It impacts their families. And the bottom line here is we've got to learn something from other countries around the world who say, look, if we're going to have a strong economy, we need well-educated people. If we need well-educated people, they need to go to college and graduate school. And we can't just impose huge financial burdens on them. So we got to get to the root cause. If you look at a major college today in America, the Ivy League or the University of Chicago or whatever, you know what they're talking about now in terms of tuition and room and board?
No.
$65,000 a year.
Holy, for the first 4 years?
Yeah, $65,000 next year.
Whoa.
$65,000 to go to the best schools in America. So if you're a working class kid whose parents are making $30,000, $40,000 a year, this is like off the wall. Now you may get a Pell Grant, which is modest. You may get some other forms of scholarships. You may be able to get a job. But even this job issue, what we're seeing is a lot of young people, instead of devoting all of their time to study, they're working a whole lot of hours, which interfere in their ability to do their schoolwork. So we got a real situation here that we have got to address, and I would hope that young people and their families all over this country make it clear that we have got to do something about this very serious problem. Just one other issue. Earlier in the week, I was on the floor dealing with climate change, and the issue here is a remarkable issue because on one hand you have virtually the entire scientific community saying very loudly and very clearly that climate change is real, the planet is warming, the oceans are warming, that it is significantly caused by human activity, that it is already causing devastating problems in our country and around the world in terms of drought, in terms of floods, in terms of extreme weather disturbances, in terms of higher and higher sea levels. And if we do not, in a very bold way, start cutting greenhouse gas emissions and carbon emissions, the situation will deteriorate significantly. So we're talking about whether or not we leave this planet to our kids and our grandchildren in a way that is habitable. And what is unbelievable is you have a Republican Party that not only is not prepared to come up with ideas to address climate change, they are still denying the reality. And what is so weird is that, we have cancer research, you have research coming out on a number of diseases. Nobody in the Republican Party says, we reject the research on cancer, we reject the research on heart illness. And yet on this issue, when the scientific community is loud and clear, because the fossil fuel industry, the energy companies, the oil companies, the coal companies, are determined to do everything that they can to maintain fossil fuel as the major source of energy in this country, our Republican friends are refusing to acknowledge the science. So that just is incredible to me.
It's astounding. I saw a stat the other day that the percentage of scientists who deny climate change is identical to the percentage of scientists who deny that tobacco causes cancer. And in many cases, as in the case of Dr. Fred Singer, they're the same people. It's amazing. Senator Bernie Sanders is with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Our commercial stations are going to commercial break now. Our Free Speech TV viewers, we're in a pledge drive, so we're going to a pledge break for that. So we will be back in 4 minutes with your questions for Senator Sanders. Please stick around. We'll be right back with Brunch with Bernie. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Senator Bernie Sanders on the line with us. Our national town hall meeting, Brunch with Bernie. Senator Sanders, you there?
I am right here.
All set to take calls. Okay, Steve in Chicago, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, I want to make a point with regard to climate change and the evolution on the part of the right with regard to their thinking. Obviously a couple of decades ago, it was all nonsense. And now we've seen a bit of an evolution, at least on the part of some of them, where, yes, we can see there's some climate change, but, you know, it's natural, it's not man-made. And then there's another cohort that will tell you, well, yes, it is man-made, but, you know, what are we supposed to do about it if America adheres to certain principles with regard to, you know, CO2 emissions, but India and China and the rest of the world aren't on board? Then how does that do us any good? It only affects our economy. So how do we respond, and what retort can we offer when they offer up these nuanced changes in their arguments? Because some of them are much more difficult to defend against, as opposed to the argument that it's not happening. That's easy to defeat. Look at the science.
Thank you. I think you crystallized pretty well kind of where some of these guys are coming from. You're right. Some of them are saying, well, yeah, maybe it's taking place, it's not man-made, or maybe it is man-made. What are we going to do about it? If we do something about it, what difference does it make? Because you got China and India, you know, doing a whole lot of coal and you know, putting more and more carbon into the air. Here's what I think the answer is. First of all, we have a planetary crisis, and there needs to be leadership. And certainly the United States will have very little credibility in China, in India, and around the rest of the world unless we start going forward first and in a significant way. Second of all, when we go forward, not only can we create jobs here in the United States in terms of weatherization, we have had just extraordinarily wonderful stories here in Vermont, and I'm sure elsewhere, where we've weatherized homes, cut fuel bills by 30 or 40%, because there are a whole lot of older buildings in Vermont and around the country, and we create jobs. You do that. You transform our energy system. You expand our rail system. You do all of those things. You clean up the environment. You create jobs, and you become a leader in the world. And then the United States goes to China and goes to India with new technologies, which can create jobs in this country. More sophisticated technologies which will allow the energy transformation that we need to take place quicker. So I think we do have a strong statement to make that we can save the planet, we can create jobs, and in many ways we can cut fuel bills for people. I should tell you that all of those ideas are incorporated in legislation that Senator Barbara Boxer and I introduced, which calls for a tax on carbon, which pumps huge amounts of money into energy efficiency and sustainable energy.
Danette in Hinesville, Georgia. You're on the air with Senator Sanders. Thanks for listening to Sirius XM.
Hi, Senator Sanders. Hi, Tom. I am the spouse of a veteran, and we have attempted on 3 separate occasions we've actually not attempted, but we've submitted information for our dependents in order for my husband to receive the full amount of the disability benefits that he's supposed to get. And all 3 occasions, they've lost our paperwork, and they're telling us that it's going to take a year to process. And then when we check on it, they're like, oh, well, we don't have your stuff. So it's like we start the process all over again.
So you're dealing with folks in Georgia on this?
No, this is we have someone in Georgia that has been helping us, but he's kind of left it up to the office that handles it. It seems like they've broken the regions up, and some of the offices handle dependent benefits, and others handle like the GI Bill and what is it called, the on-the-job training and stuff like that.
Let me suggest 2 things. Number one, give your senator or your congressperson a ring. Sometimes a call from a senator's office can expedite it. Or, if you want, you can give my office a ring, the Senate Veterans Office a ring. If you have a pencil, the number is 202-224-9126. Let's see if we can help you there.
Okay, great. 824-9126.
202-224-9126. That's the Senate Veterans Affairs Office.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Danette. Charles in Lopalaka, Florida. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, good afternoon, you guys. How you doing?
Good.
Okay, great. My thing, Senator, is Eric Cantor. He lost his seat, or he's going to lose his seat. He lost the primary. And I'm thinking, what I haven't heard so far in the national news is, does the Affordable Care Act have anything to do with that? Does Obamacare have anything to do with the people of Virginia who voted in Terry McAuliffe for Democrat? And also they have Kentucky, who's also on a program this similar to or part of the Affordable Care Act, but are those people, and are we going to see a sea change as well in these southern states where people are fed up with the do nothing Congress, and they really do want to be part of the Affordable Care Act? Because a lot of people are still maybe unemployed, and they worry about their health, and they have families that they have to take care of as well.
Charles, thanks very much for that question, because it's a very important question. As you know, the Affordable Care Act basically said, among many other things, that Medicaid would be expanded in every state in this country. And the Supreme Court ruled no, that is not constitutional. States have a right to reject the expansion of Medicaid, despite the fact, by the way, that the federal government was paying 100% of the cost for the first 3 years and then 90% of the cost after that. The result of that is over 20 states in the country, including virtually all Republican states, including over 20 states have made a decision not to expand Medicaid, and that means millions of people who would be eligible for Medicaid would finally have health insurance do not have it. And I would hope very much that the people in those states, I know in Virginia now there's a battle going on, the governor there wants it, but there are, I guess, Republicans in the legislature who do not want it, and that's a very close situation there. But I would hope that all over this country people stand up and say, you know what, health care is a right. Federal government passed legislation, Congress passed legislation allowing for the expansion of Medicaid, and people should be able to take advantage of it.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
Senator, you timed that better than I usually do. We'll be back with more from Senator Bernie Sanders right after the news at the bottom of the hour. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders taking your calls in our national town hall meeting. Be sure to check out his website at sanders.senate.gov. Senator, you're with us?
I am right here.
Okay. Joe in Long Beach, California. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good morning. Mr. Sanders, Senator Sanders, don't you mean with regards to VA care that they're not just good, they're excellent when compared to the private sector because they are surveyed against them with regards to patient care and quality outcome. And as far as I understand from my partner, who happens to be a chief and a neurologist at the VA, they do very well in that regard.
That's right, Joe. It's the difficulty of comparing the VA to the private sector is it's kind of a little bit like apples to oranges because, the VA deals with a fairly select group. Most of them, not all by any means, and a growing number are women. Most of them are men. Many of them are old, and many of them have particular service-connected problems. But there have been a number of studies which suggest that on healthcare indicator after indicator, the VA holds up very well, and in many cases better than the private sector. So what the veterans organizations, the American Legion and the DAV and the Veterans of Foreign Wars and the other groups will tell you is that when people get into the VA, the quality of care in most cases is very good, and people appreciate it and like it and want to continue to see a strong VA.
Eve in Northampton, Mass., listening on WHMP. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hello, was that for me?
That's you, Eve.
Eve? I couldn't hear if you said Eve. Hey, Tom, I'm the lady that you talked briefly to in Northampton when you were having your meeting. Do you remember me?
Oh, great, yeah. Yep, out in the car.
I hope you've been wearing my T-shirt.
We have, thank you. But you're on the air with Senator Sanders right now, so why don't you talk to him?
Thank you. Senator Sanders, my question is to you is that, this business about the jobs, losing jobs with the fossil fuels and everything like that, well, that's gone on through years, throughout history as things change. But there'd be a lot more jobs that could be created with new technology, and why isn't that being pursued as being an advantage in all of the new technologies that are not the deadly and causing all the problems environmentally and health-wise?
Well, there is a lot of research and development going on in terms of new sustainable energy technologies. And you're absolutely right. We should be investing in that. I mean, the good news, just as one example, is the cost of solar panels and solar energy in general has plummeted in recent years, and we want to see that continue. And wind technology has also made huge advances in recent years. We have in Vermont right now, people are starting to use in fairly large numbers heat pumps, which will save them significant amounts of money by not having to use oil. So technology is advancing, Eve, but you're quite right. We should be investing in new technology.
Jay in Naperville, Illinois, listening to WCPT. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, is that me?
That's you, Jay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Yeah. Senator Sanders, pleasure to speak with you and an honor. But I'm also a veteran, and I wanted to ask you a question regarding the new health care bill. I know you said that you were going to look into this. I want to, every time the VA, their answer to a lot of things are more pills. And I pay for my chiropractic out of pocket, and I pay for my acupuncture out of pocket, and I can't afford it anymore.
Okay, Joe, here's
$400 a month.
Let me just mention to you, the truth is, the VA is a huge system. It has 151 medical centers and 900 community-based outreach clinics. But here is what is interesting, and Joe asked a very important question. A lot of the people who come into the VA are dealing with pain issues, and these are issues having to do with, some of the things they had to do in service. The VA and, in fact, the DOD are kind of leading the country in helping to get people off of opiates and the overuse of drugs, which is a very serious problem, not only for veterans, but for the general public as well. And, in fact, Joe, what you will see and are seeing, right now, there was a New York Times article just a few weeks ago talking about that, and the photograph was of a guy getting acupuncture. So in many, many facilities around the country now, they are using acupuncture, they are using meditation, they're using yoga, they are using a variety of complementary and alternative medicine in a fairly aggressive way to break people's dependence on heavy doses of strong medication and opiates. And I think some of the studies suggest that the results are pretty good. So, Joe, what I would do is find out from your local medical center who is doing acupuncture or other complementary alternative medicines, but it is being done widely in the VA, and we've got legislation in to expand it even more.
I had an acupuncture treatment yesterday because my back has been hurting, and it is absolutely amazing. So, anyhow, I just wanted to testify.
But, and here's an example. I mean, there are, in general, acupuncture 30 or 40 years ago was thought to be a fairly crazy idea. Now it is becoming increasingly mainstream. Yeah. And to my surprise and delight, within both the VA and the DOD, they are using it very aggressively to try to treat the problems that Joe was talking about, and that is over-medication.
Yeah, well, I can tell you it works, and my alternative would have been to take painkillers.
Right, that's exactly the issue.
This is, Howard in Hollywood, Florida. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, a question and a quick comment to your comments on education. The reason the Republicans don't want to fund education is because the dumber the public, the more they'll vote Republican. That simple. And in my question to you, in regard to the government shutdown, we now know that Edwin Meese had planned it for several months prior to the actual shutdown. Had this been Madeleine Albright, you can bet that Darrell Issa would be holding hearings. I don't understand why the Democrats, at least in the Senate, are not holding hearings on this. This would blow the Republicans away up to the next election.
Well, Howard, this is what we do know. What we know is that the Republican Party today has, over many decades, evolved from a center-right party to a right-wing extremist party. And what we also know is that many candidates are heavily dependent for their funding, for their campaigns, on folks like the Koch brothers and other billionaires. And what we knew during the government shutdown is the more moderate-type Republicans who thought that the shutdown was a stupid idea or being told by the right-wingers, the extreme right-wingers, that if they did not vote to keep the government shut down, they would find there would be a primary opponent who would be well-funded by the billionaire class. That's what we do know. Which takes us to the broader issue, Tom, and I don't know that there's a more important domestic issue than this, and that is the issue of campaign finance reform, the need to overturn the disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision, which has now given a green light to the Koch brothers, Sheldon Adelson, and other billionaires to simply buy and sell elections. And when I was in school, what democracy was about is one person, one vote, better ideas win, not billionaires being able to buy elections. So I wanted to mention to people that I think within the next month or two, and I'm going to be active in this, there's going to be a constitutional amendment coming to the floor of the U.S. Senate, which essentially would overturn Citizens United. And I hope we can rally the American people around that issue, because if we don't get a handle on that issue, I worry very much about the future of this country and to the degree to which we're going to become an oligarchic form of society in which a handful of billionaires control not only the economy but the political life of this nation. And right now, that billionaires can buy and sell politicians is a disgrace, and it's an issue we have got to address.
Linda in Deerfield Beach, Florida. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Senator Sanders, for taking my question for all you do. My question is the post office. They're ramping up to that Sunday delivery because they want to do as many parcels as they can on Sundays. We know that there are people that are the snakes in there that still want to get rid of Saturday delivery, which we are fighting. And we also know that it's another way to bust our union. Can you give us any feedback of what's going on?
Yes, you're quite right, Linda, and thanks. Let me repeat what I've mentioned before because I want everybody to understand it.
We have a minute to the break, Bernie.
Okay. The major financial problem of the Postal Service is the requirement pushed under the Bush administration to pre-fund future retiree health care benefits for 75 years out and do it in a 10-year period, which costs about $5.5 billion a year. This is a requirement that no other agency of government has, no other corporation in America has. Without that onerous requirement, this year the Postal Service will be making about $1 billion a year. But the right-wing Republicans who are attacking Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, also want to move toward the privatization of the Postal Service. They want to shut down post offices all over the country, processing plants all over the country, and they also want to end Saturday mail. So we're going to fight them. We were able to beat back that effort last year. We're going to continue to do that, Linda. My view is that if we give the Postal Service more flexibility to earn more money, they're going to be in strong financial shape. We should not be dismembering the Postal Service, making it slower, and doing away with Saturday mail.
Thank you. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Our Free Speech TV viewers are going to see a fundraising a membership drive, and our commercial stations will be with us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Commercial stations taking a commercial break, so we will be back in 4 minutes with more questions for Bernie Sanders. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders on the line with us. And Jason in Arlington, Virginia. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hey, a quick question for you. You were talking about carbon tax. I was wondering, are we going to apply the carbon tax equally to the agriculture industry, since we know that a meat-based diet creates more greenhouse gas than every form of transportation combined?
The legislation that we have introduced would focus on, I believe, the 400 to 500, I may be wrong on that number, but a relatively small number of those entities that are producing the vast amount of carbon. So to answer your question is no, it would not be on agriculture, it would be on the coal industry, those individual entities that are producing carbon.
Ryan in Edmonds, Washington. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, I have a little bit of a different question for you. Recently, they held a hearing in the House for Science and Technology, And the scientists from SETI and others told them that within 20 years, they expect that there will be that we will be able to discover some sort of intelligent life or extraterrestrial life, microbiome or microbes or whatever. I know this is kind of an off-the-topic subject, but I wanted to find out what your thoughts are on this. Is it something that you've ever thought about? Because all these exoplanets that they have discovered now, they are now focusing, even though a lot of people have disagreements with how SETI does things, they're focusing their antennas on these exoplanets. Is it something that you've ever thought about, Bernie? And that's all I have. Thank you.
Brian, to be very honest with you, I have a hard enough time keeping track of what's going on in the United States and on the planet Earth. So, I'm more than aware that there's a lot of scientific study as to whether or not there is life on other planets, but I don't know a whole lot about it.
Les, in Mount Horeb, Wisconsin, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yes, thank you, Tom, and thank you, Senator Sanders. Last week I contacted the Social Security Administration and requested paperwork for my early retirement. I will be turning 62 years old in just a few weeks. Because I am disabled and I have been receiving disability payments of $295 a month for the last 4 years, they told me that I cannot retire and that the disability that I receive now is in lieu of my retirement, and when I became disabled, I sacrificed my retirement, which would have put me at about $1,500 a month as opposed to $800 a month currently. They said this is due to cuts in Social Security that were made during the end of the Bush administration, and that this is going to affect all of the baby boomers as they retire. Have you heard of this, Senator Sanders, and is there anything I can do about this?
That does not... Tom, do you know more about this than I do?
I don't. I don't. Les called about this last week, and I haven't had an opportunity to dig into it.
Why don't you write to Senator Baldwin or call up her office, or Senator Johnson, or your House member? That does not sound right to me, but I don't want to speak definitively about it. And if you want to write to us, we can get you some information as well. But I would make a call to Senator Baldwin or Senator Johnson to get some information on that.
Thanks, Les, for the call. Joe, in driving through Georgia, listening on Sirius Satellite Radio, Sirius XM. Hey, Joe, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah, my question is that early in the Obama administration, they overtook the college student loan program from the banks. Why wasn't this interest rate problem took care of then, as opposed to let it drag out till now?
That is a good question. In general, I think it is a better idea it is a good idea that we take the profit away from the banks and put it into the government. But there is a legitimate question as to how much, in fact, the government is earning from middle-class and working-class families. And that is an issue that I think we should address. So I think some progress has been made. But clearly, with the high cost of college and the huge level of student indebtedness, we have got to do more. And as I mentioned earlier, Joe, I think we had 2 or 3 Republicans voting with us to try to overcome a Republican filibuster. So what we have got to do is get Republicans prepared to work with us to address this issue. But we've got a lot of opposition right now from Republicans.
Senator, we have just a little less than 2 minutes. Do you want to try and squeeze in a call, or do you have some comments for the week?
Well, let me just make one comment. This is an unusual time, I think, in American history. I think when the pollsters ask people how they feel about the future of the country, by and large, they don't feel good. They're concerned. They're worried about what's going to happen to their kids. When they ask people how they feel about Congress or the White House, people are not feeling good. When they ask them how they feel about the media or they feel about major institutions, people are not feeling good. And as you and I have talked about many, many times, The one thing that we have got to do is revitalize American democracy. We need more and more people getting engaged in the serious issues that our nation faces, and that's why I love this program so much and hearing from people all over this country who have real concerns and real ideas and real questions. But the other point that I would make, Tom, is there's an election coming up in November, very, very important election. And what the political pundits are telling us is that about 60% of the American people are not going to vote. Maybe 40% will come out, and that will vary state to state. Some will be higher, some will be lower. But what also the pundits tell us, that of the 60% of the people nationally who will not vote, the number is much higher of non-voters for young people, for lower-income people, for working-class people. So you're going to have states in this country where 70-80% of low-income and working-class people don't vote, and where billionaires put huge amounts of money into elections. And that is a crisis for American democracy, and that's something we have got to address.
Senator Bernie Sanders, thanks so much for being with us.
Okay, my pleasure. Thank you.
And every week. You are so appreciated. Thank you, Senator. We will be back with Anything Goes Friday.